I have seen videos of my girlfriend cheating on me with several guys. I actually have no idea what to do right now, and I am just sitting in my bed the fourth day in a row as I can't find anything worth standing up for.
My girlfriend lives in an apartment with 4 roommates, 3 guys, and has not only cheated with all of them but former roommates as well.
This has been going on for all of our relationship, and they even filmed themselves many times. I saw the material and literally blacked out. So, I started dating her about 9 months ago. We know each other from university and hang out a few times before we went out for the first time. After a few weeks we became a couple, and I honestly thought that everything was well. I have never suspected her to cheat on me and had no idea that she isn't satisfied with our sex life. We had sex regularly and I always thought it's good. Quite vanilla to be honest, but she never even implied that this is not enough or anything. I mean, I could have changed that. Actually, I would have liked it to be more exciting, from time to time. As long as I know her, she lives in that apartment with 4 roommates. There have always been 3 guys and 2 girls. While there have been 2 guys replacing other 2 guys, the girls have always been the same. I know these people as I obviously hang out there often and even considered them to be some kind of friends of mine. Again, I have not thought about the possibility that there was something going on behind my back even one time. But my world has been destroyed on the last Saturday. We have been hanging out at their apartment as we did many times before. There were a few people over, but basically just hanging out together, watching a few movies. There was drinking, but nobody was really drunk, a quite normal boring Saturday night. Looking back now, I should have noticed some suspicious things and could have connected some dots. However, I was still totally naive and didn't want to notice anything. At one point, I was chatting with a common friend who was invited as well. I was totally engaged in the chat and therefore didn't really notice that Marie, my girlfriend, had left the room. I mean, people leave the room from time to time. That's normal, right? Neither have I noticed that one of her roommates, Janik, had left the room as well. And even if I had, I probably wouldn't have suspected anything. Now I know that she was in his bedroom, which is right next door, and was giving him head over there. Just the thought of it drives me insane. The moment where all of this started to come to my attention was only maybe half an hour later. I was casually looking through the room and I saw Marie talking to Janik and Robert. Talking to them wouldn't have been a problem at all, but she was sitting on Robert's lap, her face pretty close to his, and Janik had his hand at her butt. At first I was totally confused and just sat there watching, trying to make sense and get my head around it. I still don't know if they noticed or would have stopped anyway, but she was then getting back to a normal distance, sitting on the couch, without any touching at all. If I had looked over just a few seconds later, I might have never noticed anything again. I felt anger rising up and started to get frustrated. However, I was still giving her the benefit of the doubt, actively tried to calm down and wanted to ask her about this later. It sounds crazy from today's perspective, but I was really fighting my urge to find out what happened and wanted to remain reasonable. Looking back, that seems to be totally stupid. But of course, now my attention had been drawn to this, and even if I was forcing myself to continue with my chat, I noticed that Marie was leaving the room again maybe 10 minutes later. I looked around and noticed that Robert has not been in the room as well. Honestly, I was scared but still hoping that there is an easy explanation and I am totally on the wrong track. I excused myself to go to the toilet and went to the hallway. I still clearly remember how my heart pounded as if I was running a marathon, my throat was dry and I could barely walk. The toilet was free, and as that meant they were somewhere else, I panicked. Literally, I was completely overwhelmed with anxiety and anger, just stood there for what felt like an eternity. When I regained control over my thoughts, some part of me was still hoping that there's a misunderstanding and I should just go back to the living room, where they would sit and nothing happened. But at that point I just had to know. I went to her room and had a look inside. It was empty, so I went to his room. The door was closed and I was about to try to open it when I heard noises from the inside. Without thinking about it, I got down to have a look through the keyhole. That was the first time my heart got ripped out of my chest by them. He was sitting on his bed, completely naked. She was still dressed but was obviously completely fine with him being naked. They were talking but I wasn't really able to hear their words, as the sound of the movie was too loud. I looked at it as if I was frozen. I can't remember thinking about anything at that moment. Still, at that moment, after having seen this scene, there was a part of me that refused to believe that she was cheating. I actually even felt kind of guilty for sneak peeking. It feels ridiculous from today's perspective. When I heard a noise coming towards the hallway, I quickly hid behind a shelf instead of ending all of this. It was just another guest going to the bathroom. After she had closed the door, I got back to the door and looked through the keyhole again. In the meantime, she had taken her clothes off as well and was on all fours in the doggy position. Believe it or not, the first thing I noticed was that she seemed to be so much more into it than I had ever seen her before, even though he hadn't even started doing anything. I still vividly remember how she was completely bent down, with her head on the sheets and her butt high up. She hasn't been in that position with me only once. It still wasn't easy to hear what they were saying, but in my memories I can hear her commenting his penis when he approached her. Honestly, I felt like in a movie, as if I was doomed to watch this, with no chance of doing anything, which is completely stupid, I know. I was ripped out of this tunnel when I heard the toilet flush and had to leave my position again. Without thinking, I went back on the other side of the shelf and waited for the girl to disappear. After she was gone, I intended to keep looking and was already on my way. However, before I arrived, another guy entered the hallway. I assume he was looking for me and therefore I had no time to hide again. He looked at me standing in front of the door and we both knew that I had found out what was going on in there. It was still very loud but I could swear that I was able to hear them inside his room. He was completely calm and said something like, "I assume that you want to go home now, right?" I was in complete autopilot and nodded. I grabbed my shoes and just went out. After I arrived at home, I had a look at my phone and saw that the guy the first met in the hallway had sent me a message in WhatsApp. It was just the word, "sorry," and a link to a Google Drive. I opened the link before I thought about it and I landed in a folder full of video files. As you might noticed from my previous actions, I wasn't thinking at all, I was just doing stuff and have no idea why I did what I did. So I randomly clicked on a video. It took me a few seconds to process what I was seeing, but after that, I literally blacked out. It was a video of Marie. She was in her room, on her knees, right in front of her bed, naked and full of sweat. One of her roommates was standing in front of her while she gave him a blowjob. Another roommate was filming this and commented a lot. I was standing in the living room when I started the video. I first dropped the phone, then briefly lost consciousness and found myself on the floor. My shoulder was hurting and my head was completely empty. I can't say for sure, but I assume that I was laying there for at least half an hour. When I tried to get up, I felt pain in my legs and started to cry. It was this moment when I first realized what has happened. I haven't left my apartment after that. It's been 4 days and I am just sitting here, not knowing what to do. Marie sent me a message the next morning, asking why I left and if everything is all right. I just answered, "I know everything." She tried to call me a few times after that, but I have not picked up the phone. I assume she was trying to talk to me in person too, but when someone rang the bell I just ignored it. On Sunday I couldn't stop myself from scrolling through that folder. It is full of videos and photos of her and her roommates, mostly in a sexual context. I haven't seen everything and I most likely never will, as it just hurts too much. But I watched some parts of it and always regretted the decision. I assume what makes this so awful for me is the combination of several things. First of all, it's the feeling of having been betrayed. I have never been cheated on and it just feels bad. However, the circumstances make it even worse. I still remember how my brother found out that his fiancée had a one-night stand after her bachelorette party. That was really horrible for him. But at least he knew that it was a special situation, happened just one time and so on. Marie, however, cheated on me for all these months. She did it with several guys and it was obviously planned. I actually don't even understand this. Why has she been with me in the first place? What makes this even more confusing for me, is that it seems that she wanted this kind of sex, but was never like this with me. It's just so weird and I don't understand that. For example, she actively told me that, when she gives me a blowjob, I need to warn her before I cum. In 9 out of 10 times she would then stop and let me cum in a paper towel or something. But I have now seen these videos where she doesn't seem to have any problems with the guys coming in her mouth. Why? It's just not understandable for me. That's just one example. There is so much more. I could go on for hours. But I assume that this text is already long enough and I am sorry for that. Thank you for reading. The best thing you did was the prenup. I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Unfortunately, if you didn't have separate lawyers, the prenup isn't worth the paper it's written on, and even then it can be ignored if the judge so feels like it. Divorce court is not friendly to men. That being said, this is still absolutely the right move to make. Op deserves to be happy, and leaving his wife is absolutely the right move. Don't ask out or date anyone until everything has settled down and cooled off after the divorce. No one in the world will not suspect you just started having a wandering eye if you do. Do yourself a favor and preserve your freedom after the divorce. If you taint it with another person, you're always going to simply be a cheater who wanted a divorce to sleep around, and will never hear the end of it from the ex, family, or friends. Good luck, Doc.
Only piece of advice is be sure the barista is really flirting and not just being nice to the customer.
Seen a lot of women post on here about being nice to their customers and they start thinking there's something when it's just them being nice. But I'm definitely looking for an update after the breakup and on the barista.